This is the main news of Korea today. With the number of COVID-19 confirmed cases on the rise again, more than 100,000 new confirmed cases occurred nationwide by 9 p.m. on the 1st. According to each local government, including the quarantine authorities and Seoul Metropolitan Government, a total of 106,367 new confirmed patients were tested positive for COVID-19 in 17 cities and provinces nationwide from midnight to 9 p.m. that day. It is the first time in 104 days that the number of new confirmed cases has exceeded 100,000 in the interim count as of 9 p.m. since April 19, 107,923. The figure is an increase of 63,484 from 42,883 tallied at the same time the previous day, and an increase of 12,154 from the 94,213 tallied at 9 p.m. on the 25th of last month. As there is still time left until midnight, when the tally closes, the number of new confirmed cases to be announced as of 0 o'clock on the 2nd is expected to increase further to around 110,000. A nurse at Asan Medical Center in Seoul, which operates the largest bed in Korea, collapsed due to a cerebral hemorrhage while on duty, but died after being transferred to another hospital because she had no intention of operating. According to an article posted on Blind, an anonymous community for office workers on the 1st, a nurse working at Asan Medical Center in Seoul on the morning of the 24th of last month collapsed due to a cerebral hemorrhage. Afterwards, A was transferred to the hospital's emergency room, but was transferred to Seoul National University Hospital because there were no medical staff to operate on, but eventually died. At the time of A's collapse, most of the doctors attended the conference, and there were only on duty, so there were no medical staff to perform emergency surgery. As the incident became known, an employee said, the patient died because the hospital, which boasted that it was ranked among the top 50 in the world, failed to perform emergency surgery. Unfortunately, some say that this is the reality of medical care in Korea. As there were limited doctors who could perform cerebrovascular surgery, and inevitable medical gaps such as attending academic meetings occurred, the results would not have been much different even if it was a patient other than A. In the past, there have been cases in which patients died while moving from place to place in the hospital because they could not undergo surgery. However, this case is causing a stir in that it is a medical staff at a large hospital in Korea. As public opposition spread over the plan to lower the enrollment age of elementary school to 5 years old, Deputy Prime Minister and Education Minister Park Sun-ae actively stepped up by conducting doorstepping, an unscheduled summary press conference, including media interviews. However, public opposition is expected to continue as the possibility of policy withdrawal is not left open. According to the education community on the 2nd, Deputy Prime Minister and Education Minister Park Sun-ae held a brief press conference in front of the Korea Educational Facility Safety Center in Udo, Seoul, on the 1st and said, "We will go through the process of reaching social consultations in an open manner." Such a brief press conference is interpreted as an intention to evolve against opposition from the educational community and parents. The education community and parents have strongly protested since the Ministry of Education announced in its presidential report on the 29th of last month that the age of elementary school admission will be lowered to 5 years old. This is because the existing elementary school curriculum is not suitable for the age of 5, and problems such as damage to students in a specific birth year and lack of overcrowded classes and teachers will arise during the 4-year reform process. In response, 42 organizations, including education, civic groups, private education, and the world, formed the Pan-National Solidarity to Prevent Elementary School Students for the Age of 5, and held a press conference in front of the President's office in Yongsan-gu, Seoul the day before. According to the Pan-National Solidarity, 130,000 people participated in the online signatures they conducted as of 2 p.m. the previous day. Most Korean parents now recognize elementary school entrance as the starting point for the college entrance competition, the Pan-National Solidarity said. The practical meaning of a year early entering elementary school is to push infants into cruel competitive education and rank them in one line according to their grades. Teachers' organizations such as the Korea Federation of Teachers Associations, the Korean Teachers Union, and the Korea National Kindergarten Teachers Association also contributed to the opposition, saying, "We did not consider the developmental characteristics of infants." As the backlash intensified, the Ministry of Education began to evolve. In a back briefing of reporters on the previous day, Park reiterated the purpose of the reorganization of the school system, saying, "The main goal of the national education gap by strengthening the national education responsibility system. All policies are not completed when talking about policies, but we will listen to opinions from all walks of life, including parents and education experts in various fields, and start through policy research, Park said at the meeting. In fact, Deputy Prime Minister Park said in a radio broadcast on the previous day that she could consider moving up the admission process for 12 years, 1 month each. However, it seems that the possibility of withdrawing the reorganization of the school system is not open at the moment. Deputy Prime Minister Park appeared on TV on the 30th of last month and drew a line when asked if early admission to elementary school could be withdrawn if there were many opposing opinions. Park said in an interview at the time, "I don't think that will be withdrawn. If you share information about your child's future and employment with parents, there is room for mothers to change their thoughts," he said. Nevertheless, if mothers say, "This is not it," they open it selectively. We hope that this good policy, which we hope, will benefit the nation and the future of our children. As the government repeatedly shows its willingness to pursue policies, voices calling for the revamp of the school system are expected to continue for the time being. Right now, the KTU will start a one-man protest in front of the presidential office in Yongsan, Seoul, from the 12th to prevent the 5-year-old from attending elementary school. Chung Sung-kook, chairman of the Korea Federation of Teachers Associations, plans to meet with Park in person soon to urge her to withdraw her policy. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo ordered Park Soon-ae, Deputy Prime Minister for Social Affairs and Education, to listen to the opinions of various educational consumers and reflect the revision of the school system, which will lower the enrollment age by 1 year to 5 years. According to the Prime Minister's office, Han ordered Park to do so. It is interpreted as a response to the growing concern among parents about the school system reform plan. Prime Minister Han said, "Listen to various opinions of education consumers, including parents, and faithfully reflect them in related policies," adding, "Each child has a different degree of development and each school has a different situation." According to the Prime Minister's office, the Ministry of Education ordered the media to listen to the pros and cons of education suppliers and consumers, collect expert opinions, come up with supplementary measures, and explain and communicate the entire policy process transparently and in detail. The Ministry of Education reaffirmed its policy of de facto abolition of foreign language high schools while maintaining autonomous private high schools. Heads of foreign language high schools issued a statement demanding the withdrawal. The Council of Heads of 30 foreign language high schools issued a statement on the 1st, saying, "If we do not withdraw the abolition policy immediately, we will actively respond by taking all measures, including legal action." The Presidential Transition Committee expressed its policy of maintaining the right and freedom of education guaranteed by the Constitution, diversity of education, and education options for students, the Council said. The Ministry unilaterally announced the policy without discussions or public hearings. Earlier in the day, the Ministry of Education reaffirmed its position that it will virtually abolish foreign language high schools and consider the need to maintain international high schools. "We will consider abolishing foreign language schools or converting them into schools specializing in foreign language subjects," Education Ministry spokesman Choi Sung-buletin said in a regular briefing. "We will announce international high schools after thorough review to see if they fit the future society." The government will include a plan to reorganize foreign and international high schools in its plan to be announced in December. On the 29th of last month, Deputy Prime Minister for Social Affairs and Minister of Education Park Soon-ae explained in a preliminary briefing of the Ministry of Education's work plan, "We have the idea of maintaining private high schools but abolishing or changing foreign schools to have special purposes through various curriculums in various fields." At that time, the Ministry of Education included the operation of curriculum-specific schools in various fields through the plan to enhance general high school education capabilities announced along with the policy of maintaining private high schools. A system that allows only batteries to be subscribed separately when purchasing electric vehicles will be promoted. It falls out of the original price by the price of the battery. If you buy an electric car of Kia Niro, you can buy a vehicle for 10 million won, which is cheaper than 45.3 million won. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced on the 1st that it would introduce an electric vehicle battery subscription service through the National Transport Regulatory Reform Committee. To this end, the government will improve regulations that require the same entry of car owners and battery owners in the automobile registry under the current law. Even if the owner of the car and battery are different, it can be put on the register. Analysts say that the government has specified what it has been pushing for through the battery lease pilot project since 2020. When buying a Niro electric car, it can be purchased at 35.3 million won now, excluding an average of 10 million won in government and local government subsidies from 45.3 million won in existing sales. In addition, it is possible to purchase it for 14.3 million won, excluding 21 million won in battery price. There are still problems to be solved, such as calculation of battery subscription fees and tax when batteries are excluded from the acquisition tax standard. An official from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport said, this improvement is due to the request of the Credit Finance Association to launch battery rental products, adding, it is expected to contribute to the spread of electric vehicles and fostering new battery industries. The Korea Credit Finance Association is reportedly considering financial products that lease monthly battery subscription fees through each capital company. If battery rental increases, the waste battery business is also expected to be activated. This is because it is easier for companies with ownership to recover batteries and reuse them as energy storage Ss or recycle raw materials. Last month, 25 units of the M850iX Drive Edition, released by BMW Korea as an online limited edition, were sold out with the start of sales. The limited edition price, which was made to commemorate the release of the M850iX Drive, was set at 150 million won, which is about 10 million won more expensive than the previous model. Due to the change in interior and exterior, luxury leather was added to the seats, and the premium that only 25 units were sold in Korea, all of them were sold in an instant. Imported car companies are targeting the market by introducing a series of limited edition models in Korea with scarcity and value. Even if it is expensive, it has become a new sales strategy for imported car makers, with consumers choosing to want special vehicles that are different from others. According to the finished car industry on the 1st, many imported car companies such as Maserati, Mercedes, Volvo Truck Korea, Porsche and Jeep have released limited edition models in Korea this year. If the scope is expanded to last year, all imported car brands that entered Korea, except for some luxury cars, have introduced limited editions. The limited edition, which captivated consumers' desire to express their different personalities through cars, is selling like hotcakes at high prices along with active marketing by imported car makers. BMW Korea is the most actively introducing limited edition models. BMW Korea, which opened an online shop at the end of 2019, has been releasing a limited edition model every month since 2020. All of the limited edition models introduced so far have been sold. The 69 units of the i4 First Edition, which was introduced in April, were sold out in 2 hours and 40 minutes as the price range was known to be somewhat cheap, 87.7 million won for imported cars. The limited edition model is not exclusive to cars. Since last month, Volvo Truck Korea has been selling 60 FH Tractor 540 Globetrotter XL Cap special models that have been renewed in design and specifications to commemorate the 25th anniversary of sales in Korea. In the case of domestic gasoline, prices fell from 2,001 to 1,801 and 1,901, respectively. However, diesel is expected to remain at a high level for the time being. This is because diesel imports from Europe, which are highly dependent on Russia, are partially limited by sanctions against Russia. As international diesel prices are maintained at a high level, they are expected to maintain higher prices than gasoline to some extent. Sales prices at gas stations across the country have continued to fall since the oil tax cut, 37%, was implemented on the 1st of last month. As of July 31st, gasoline was 1,897.31 per liter and diesel was 1,982.61. Gasoline entered the 1,801 range for the first time since March 9. Compared to June 30, the day before the implementation of the oil tax cut, gasoline fell 247.61 per liter and diesel fell 185.11. However, diesel imports from Europe, which is highly dependent on Russia, are partially limited by sanctions against Russia. It is expected to maintain higher prices than gasoline for the time being. By gas station, it was found that it is leading the market price by drastically lowering prices, mainly at thrifty gas stations. It was found that 306.11 per liter of self-employed budget and 278.11 per liter of ex-budget were reduced, respectively, during the month of implementation based on gasoline. The average price of regular refinery poles also fell by 245.91 per liter during the month of implementation, continuing to fall after running out of existing inventory. Oil refiners' supply prices at gas stations are also continuing to fall, reflecting additional cuts in oil taxes and falling prices of international petroleum products. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy explained that it will do its best to ensure that domestic oil product prices fall quickly to stabilize the people's livelihoods. On the 1st of last month, it has been operating a market inspection team for oil refineries and gas stations in line with the implementation of the largest cut in oil taxes. A total of 10 inspections were conducted until the 4th week of July, and more than twice a week will be inspected at gas stations nationwide until oil prices stabilize in the future. By the end of August, it is also conducting a special inspection of illegal activities such as distribution of fake oil that abused the timing of high oil prices at more than 4,000 gas stations nationwide. The main reason for the leak of midterm and final exam papers in Dedong High School in Gwangju, Jeollanam-do, is poor school security. He broke into the teacher's office about 10 times, but the security system failed, and the security guards were not aware of the students' crimes. On the 1st, Gwangju Sobyu police are investigating the second graders of Dedong High School without detention due to obstruction of business and intrusion of buildings on charges of taking illegal tests. Police are also reportedly considering applying charges of violating the Information and Communication Network Act. 2 people, including A, broke into the main office on the 2nd floor, the second grade office on the 4th floor, and the school annex on about 10 occasions from mid-March to early last month before the midterm and final exams were held. The police judged that they planted malicious codes in 10 to 15 teachers' laptops and stole the test paper. It was also confirmed that the school's security facilities have not worked properly since mid-January this year. Dedong High School started large-scale space relocation work in mid-January this year. In the process, the security system was suspended and it did not restart even in March when the construction was completed. In mid-March, ahead of the midterm exam, the students first broke into the teacher's office through the window and attempted to leak the test and answer sheets. After confirming that the security system was not in operation at the time, he freely committed the crime. The possibility of attempting the crime has not been confirmed so far, recognizing that the security facility was not operating even before the first intrusion. They attempted to commit the crime after 10 p.m. when the night self-study ended, and stayed in the teacher's office for at least 2 hours and as much as 4 hours. The next day, he returned home from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., and after the crime, he returned home by bicycle and taxi. Security guards were on duty inside the school at the time of their break-in, but they said they could not find an intruder. The Education Office has yet to discuss disciplinary measures for faculty members who are responsible for operating insufficient school security. Police have launched an investigation into the 40-second video of mass assault between female students spreading online. Gwangju Sobyu Police Station said on the 1st that it has received a witness report that 4 female students are assaulting a female student who is believed to be her age at a rooftop building in Seogu, Gwangju, on the 27th of last month and is investigating. A police official said, "We have identified the perpetrators in the video, and we will call them to investigate." Video footage of the assault case is being distributed on social media under the title of Gwangju Middle School Girls' School Violence. The 43-second video showed 4 female students surrounding and assaulting a victim. In the video, one of the perpetrators leads the assault. While hitting the victim's head and cheek with his palm 6 times, he asks several times, "Are you sick?" and hits the stomach or shoulder several times. When the victim, who was sniffling, defended himself with his arm, the student punched him in the face again, saying, "Do you want to get hit in the face? The students around me just watched the situation." The video showed the victim saying, "Wake up, take a pretty picture so that your legs come out long, don't hit your pretty face, and oh, you're pretty." The original video, in which the victim's face is exposed, is currently deleted. A police official said, the person who uploaded the video for the first time is considered one of the groups who participated in the violence. The National Solidarity for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities, InGilBang, a left-wing social group that has been protesting on the way to and from work, resumed a subway rally on the way to work on the 1st. As it rains in Seoul, traffic congestion occurs everywhere, and the protests are expected to add to the inconvenience of citizens. The National Solidarity for the Disabled announced that from 7:30 a.m. on the same day, the 34th subway on the way to work will be held from Gwanghae-Wamun Station on Line 5 to Uido Station and National Assembly Hall Station on Line 9. InGilBang earlier demanded an answer from the Ministry of Strategy and Finance on the budget for the rights of the disabled, and warned, "If there is no answer by the end of July, I will take the subway every Monday from August 1 st." The demonstration was also reportedly held to urge the Ministry of Economy and Finance to respond. The Seoul Metropolitan Transportation Corporation announced InGilBang's subway rally schedule through SNS and said, there may be delays in the operation of trains on Line 5. Please refer to the train service. The sister pimp, who was accused of abusing the female employees who worked at a prostitution business, by putting them on leash, and pouring boiling water on their bodies, admitted to all the crimes. In the first trial following the trial preparation process conducted by the Chuncheon District Court's Wonju District Court on the 1st, Poju A, 48, and B, 52, said, "We will acknowledge all the charges and make efforts to compensate the victims for the damage." The sisters of A, who sat in the defendant's seat on the same day, nodded in recognition of the presiding judge's question, "Did the lawyer admit all the charges, but are you in the same position? And do you admit all the charges and criminal charges?" A's sister's lawyer told the court, "The defendants are vowing to do their best to compensate the victims for their damage." The sisters of A are accused of abusing 5 female employees in their 30s to 40s by filling them with leash, winding chains, giving them dog food mixed with rice, or pouring boiling water on their bodies. He is also accused of picking up pieces of stones and forcing them to put them in important parts of the female employee's body, forcing them to eat feces and urine during confinement, forcing them to engage in similar sexual activities with the other person, and threatening them. The court even completed the investigation of evidence without issue on the same day as A's sisters admitted all 16 charges, including threats to use and similar rape, including filming of violations of the Special Act on Joint Imprisonment, Joint Assault, Habitual Assault, Coercion, and Punishment of Sexual Violence Crimes. A's sisters and lawyers also agreed on all evidence, including investigation records of a total of 8 volumes and 3,000 pages, and reports of statements made by suspects and victims. However, regarding the charges of confinement, the court legally determined whether it constitutes imprisonment and requested that the sentence be taken into account. The next trial will be held at the Wonju branch of the Chuncheon District Court on the 25th. Korea's hourly minimum wage will be higher than Japan for the first time next year. The Nihon Keizai Shimbun reported on the 1st that Japan's Central Minimum Wage Council has decided to raise the minimum wage by 31 yen next year, which is an average of 930 yen to about 9,167 won. The increase was 3.3%, the highest ever. If the exchange rate of 985.137 won per 100 yen is applied later in the day, Japan's average minimum wage for next year will be about 9,471, below Korea's minimum wage of 9,621 next year. The Japanese business community expected the average minimum wage to be decided next year at around 965 yen, up about 35 yen. The new minimum wage will be applied from October this year to September next year. The reversal of the minimum wage between Korea and Japan is analyzed as a result of the accumulation of the gap in the rate of increase and a sharp drop in the value of the yen. While Japan's minimum wage has risen by 3% over the past 2 years, Korea has risen by 5%. If the Central Minimum Wage Council, an advisory body of the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, confirms the increase at the end of July every year, 47 metropolitan and provincial governments will individually decide on the minimum wage. Tokyo, which has the highest minimum wage this year, was 1,041 yen, and Okinawa Prefecture, the lowest, was 820 yen. Japan will be caught up with South Korea for the first time even after raising the minimum wage by the largest margin next year. This is because Korea has raised the minimum wage more actively than Japan over the past few years and the yen has plunged. The 31 yen increase in the minimum wage decided by Japan's Central Minimum Wage Council is the largest, 3.3%, ever. The biggest increase so far was 3.1%, 28 yen, last year. The Asahi Shimbun reported on the 1st, the increase was decided to the highest level, focusing on the increasing burden on households due to rising prices. Japan's minimum wage for next year will fall below Korea's, 9,621, despite the record increase. It is largely due to the sharp drop in the value of the yen. The value of the won per 100 yen, which was moving from 1,011 to 1,081 yen last year, has jumped 3 to 7% to 979 to 1,003 won since the second quarter of this year. Japan's minimum wage is the lowest among major economic powers. The Japanese government plans to raise the minimum wage to 1,000 yen as soon as possible. To this end, the minimum wage has been raised by more than 3% every year except for the freeze in 2020, when COVID-19 has spread since 2016. Nevertheless, Japan's minimum wage level remains at the bottom because other countries are also active in raising the minimum wage. Germany raised the minimum wage by 6.4% to 10.45 euros, about 13,931, in July, followed by another 14.8% increase to 12 euros from October. France also raised the minimum wage by 2.6% to 10.85 euros from May. In the US, where the minimum wage varies from region to region, the city of Los Angeles has raised the minimum wage by 6.9% to $16, about 28.61, since July. Japanese economists worry that if the minimum wage is lower than Korea, it will have difficulty attracting workers from Southeast Asia. Japan, whose population began to decline in 2015, is filling its scarce workforce with overseas workers. The value of income earned by Southeast Asian workers, including Vietnam, has fallen sharply. According to the Overseas Labor Attractiveness Index of the Daiichi Life Economic Research Institute, the Vietnamese index, which was 36.7 times in 2011, fell 20.5 times in 2021. This means that if Vietnamese workers worked in Japan for the minimum wage in 2011, they could have earned 37 times more than their own country, but now they earn only 20 times more. The attractiveness index of Chinese working for the minimum wage in Japan has also fallen from 8.4 times to 3.6 times in 10 years. Regarding the exemption of military service by the world-renowned K-pop group BTS on the 1st, Lee Ki-sik, head of the Military Manpower Administration, said, "Equity in alternative military service should be considered. The addition of pop culture and culture figures could break the overall military service exemption framework," he said. Director Lee replied at a plenary session of the National Assembly's National Defense Committee when asked by Sung Il-jong, a member of the People's Power who is in charge of the ruling party, "Have you considered BTS exemption from military service in terms of national interest?" In fact, he expressed a negative position on BTS exemption from military service. Director Lee Ki-sik also said, "We are not increasing military service exceptions related to semiconductors," when lawmaker Sung asked, citing the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's fostering of the semiconductor industry. Director Lee clearly drew the line, saying, "We are adjusting the number of personnel within the framework of the overall industrial functional personnel," adding, "We are not separately increasing the number of semiconductor personnel." Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup also expressed a negative view on BTS exemption from military service. Minister Lee said, "There will be a way to solve principled problems such as fairness, equity, and reduction of military service resources," adding, "BTS will come to the military, but they can give it a chance to practice in the military. If there is a schedule for overseas performances, we believe there will be a way to allow them to leave the country and perform," he said. He then said, "Many people value BTS military service itself very highly, so it could rather help its popularity." Entertainers are excited along with the music industry as news of K-pop girl groups' comeback and debut recently came out. While attention is being paid to who will become the next girl group queen this summer, YG Entertainment, which includes Blackpink, has seen the biggest increase in stock prices among Korea's leading entertainment stocks over the past month. aespa, who made a comeback with her second mini-album Girls released on the 8th of last month, achieved 1 million initial albums for the first time in K-pop girl group history. The girls not only achieved the highest pre-order record for K-pop girl groups, but also recorded the first edition of 1,426,487 copies based on the Circle chart. The initial period refers to album sales for the first week after the release date. It is one of the representative indicators of idol group fan cohesion. Until now, only boy groups such as BTS have achieved the first edition of 1 million, but new girl groups, which have debuted less than 2 years ago, have made new K-pop history. Senior and junior girl groups will challenge themselves one after another in an unusual aespa sensation. The first thing to do is New Jeans, which will debut next week. New Jeans is the first girl group introduced by Min Hee-jin, who left the position of creative director of SM Entertainment and moved to representative of Hive label Ardor. Min Hee-jin, who had released his second full-length album Pink Tape in the past, will compete against Home SM with New Jinx. Lee Hyun, a researcher at Yuanta Securities, said, New Jeans' album pre-order was 440,000 copies as of the 28th of last month, and low-grade groups such as aespa also showed great growth every time they release a new album, so the growth target and expected future profit generation are likely to be greater than existing IP. Blackpink, the girl group's strongest who marks the 6th anniversary of their debut, will also make a comeback for the first time in a year and 11 months next month, igniting a fire in the girl group competition. On top of that, Girls' Generation, which is in its 15th year since its debut, will also make a full comeback on the 8th, adding strength to its brother aespa. Twice, which recently renewed its contract with JYP Entertainment, is also expected to continue its girl group war throughout this month, making a comeback on the 26th. The fact that Korea's leading entertainment companies have regained upward momentum with a remarkable rise in stock prices is also related to expectations for girl group Daejeon. Thank you for watching today.